Welcome back students in our this session, and today I am going to teach you about the two types of respiration, that is, one is aerobic respiration and the second one is anaerobic respiration. But before I teach you from the book, I wanted to share with you a small chart that I have made you to explain between the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So children, here there is a small chart that I have made for you to explain you between the two types of respiration. Now before I start with the two types of respiration, just see what is respiration. Now respiration is the release of energy from breakdown of glucose. So respiration is the process in which there is a release of energy from the breakdown of food, from the breakdown of glucose. So this is the definition of respiration, that it is a release of energy from the breakdown of glucose. Now we see that what are the two types of respiration. Now the two types of respiration are, first is aerobic respiration and the second one is anaerobic respiration. Now this aerobic respiration always occurs with oxygen. This aerobic respiration, it occurs always with oxygen, and anaerobic respiration occurs without oxygen. So this is the first and the main point of aerobic and anaerobic respiration, that it occurs, if there is aerobic respiration, it occurs with oxygen, and if there is anaerobic respiration, it occurs without oxygen. Now we come to the second point, and in this second point, children, as you can see in this second point, that in both in aerobic as well as in anaerobic, both the equation, it starts with the glucose. So both of the equation, they start with the glucose. So we have to learn this chemical equation, and this is the molecular formula of glucose, C6H12O6, children. Now when this C6H12O6, it combines with the molecules of oxygen, with the 6 molecules of oxygen, it gives out carbon dioxide, water and energy. It releases, when both of them combine together, it releases carbon dioxide, water and energy. And this, as there is a complete breakdown of glucose during this aerobic respiration, that is why it releases a lot of energy. Now we see what is anaerobic respiration. Now in this also, the equation starts with the glucose, and when glucose, it gives, without the oxygen, it gives out lactic acid and energy. And this lactic acid, children, it is a very toxic substance. Now as I said, toxic, it means it is very poisonous. It is highly poisonous. So this lactic acid is poisonous for our body, and hence we have to remove it from our body. So it gets oxidized with the oxygen, and it gives out carbon dioxide plus water. It gives out carbon dioxide and water. And why it is necessary to remove this lactic acid from our body, children? This lactic acid is toxic. As I said, it is highly poisonous for your body, and that's why it makes you feel fatigue and muscles cramp. Now muscles cramp means where while you run, while you walk, sometimes you feel that there is a stretch in your muscles. So at that time you are having the feeling of muscles cramp, and this muscles cramp occurs because of the lactic acid that is produced in our body, and we have to remove this lactic acid from our body so that we do not feel the muscles cramp and we do not feel fatigue. And this lactic acid, it needs to be oxidized in the form of carbon dioxide and water. So this is the second point for the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now see the third point, the glucose breakdown. In aerobic respiration, children, there is a complete breakdown of glucose. And just because there is a complete breakdown of glucose, so it releases carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now in anaerobic respiration, it is incomplete breakdown of glucose. Now the fourth point is the location where this respiration takes place. Aerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm and in the mitochondria of the plant cell. Then this anaerobic respiration, it occurs in the cytoplasm. And now we see the fifth point, the energy. The energy release in aerobic respiration is relatively large in amount, and because there is a complete breakdown, so there is a large amount of energy that releases during the aerobic respiration. And the energy that is released in anaerobic respiration is very less. There is relatively small amount of energy which is released during the anaerobic respiration. Now children, the end product of the aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water. And in anaerobic respiration, the end product are lactic acid in human and ethanol and carbon dioxide in yeast. Now as I told you that ethanol and carbon dioxide, it is the end product in yeast in anaerobic respiration. Now what happens is that in yeast, when the glucose breakdowns, it gives ethanol, and this ethanol we use, children, for making beer and wine. And it also releases carbon dioxide and energy. And the carbon dioxide that released during this process, this we use in baking and in rising the dough. In making the bakery products, we use this carbon dioxide so that the dough rises. So this is the use of ethanol and carbon dioxide, and I hope you understand the difference between the two. So we just revise it once again. Aerobic respiration, it occurs with oxygen and glucose. When it combines with oxygen, it gives out carbon dioxide, water and energy, and this it releases as an end product. Then in aerobic respiration, there is a complete breakdown of glucose. Then the location where it occurs in the cytoplasm and in the mitochondria of the cell. Then in energy release, in aerobic respiration, it is large. There is a large amount of energy release in aerobic respiration. Then end product in aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water. Now we see about the anaerobic respiration. Now in anaerobic respiration, children, it occurs without oxygen, and when glucose oxidized, it gives out lactic acid, which is highly toxic. Then it releases less amount of energy also, and this lactic acid, it needs to be oxidized into carbon dioxide and water. And then in yeast, the anaerobic respiration, we see that in yeast, it also known as fermentation, and this glucose, it breaks down into ethanol and carbon dioxide, it gives out, and energy also. Now as I told you that there is an incomplete breakdown of glucose in anaerobic respiration. Then the location where it occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. Then there is a less amount of energy release in anaerobic respiration. Then lactic acid, it is produced in humans and it is highly toxic. Then ethanol and carbon dioxide, it occurs in yeast, and we use this ethanol in making beer and wine, and we use carbon dioxide in bakery products. Now we see that what is given in your books. So children, now we start from our book, the types of respiration. Now the first question is that how many types of respiration are there? Write down in your book, everyone, how many types of respiration are there. So there are two types of respiration, aerobic respiration or cellular respiration, and anaerobic respiration. Now first we see that what is aerobic respiration. Now the oxygen which enters the lungs and then the cells of the body is used for oxidation of glucose. Now as I said, oxidation of glucose, children, it means the slow burning of glucose, and when there is a slow burning of glucose, it releases a lot of energy. Now in this process, food is completely oxidized to form carbon dioxide and water. Now we can see here there is an equation, and this equation I have also given in that chart, that glucose, when it combines with oxygen, it gives out carbon dioxide and water. So the carbon dioxide and water, these are the end products of aerobic respiration. And in aerobic respiration, there is a complete oxidation of food. The food, it gets completely oxidized to form carbon dioxide and water. Now next thing about is that it occurs, here in your book is written presence of oxygen, so everyone cut it and write down with the use of oxygen. This aerobic respiration occurs with the use of oxygen. It utilizes oxygen, and because of this, the glucose get completely oxidized. Now this process is completed partly in the cytoplasm of the cell and mainly in the mitochondria of the cell. So this is about aerobic respiration. And now we see what is anaerobic respiration. Now in certain microorganisms like fungi, yeast and bacteria, this glucose is partly oxidized into lactic acid or ethyl alcohol. Now this I have already explained you with that chart, and when this ethyl alcohol, when this lactic acid, it gets oxidized, it gives out carbon dioxide and water. Then this anaerobic respiration occurs without the use of oxygen. So in your books, here it is written in the absence, so you cut this line and write here without the use of oxygen. This anaerobic respiration occurs without the use of oxygen. Now this anaerobic respiration also occurs in yeast and plants, and it is known as fermentation. Now the energy released during this process is very less. As I told you that the energy release in anaerobic respiration is less, and this entire process is completed in the cytoplasm of the cell. This anaerobic respiration occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now children, this anaerobic respiration also takes place in our muscles during the vigorous muscular activity. Now vigorous muscular activity means, children, when you run, when you walk, or when you perform some exercise activities, at that time the anaerobic respiration takes place in our muscles. Now this means when oxygen gets used up faster, then it is available to the muscles cell. Now when you have you ever noticed, when you run, when you do cycling, the breath that you take, the oxygen level, it really increases at that time, and this is because so children, when you do some exercising, when you do fast running, when you do cycling, and when you do the heavy weight lifting, during that time the demand for energy goes very high, and this supply of oxygen to produce the energy is limited at that time. So this anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the muscle cell to fulfill the demand of energy. Now during this process, the lactic acid is formed in the muscle cell. As I have explained you that during this exercises work, the lactic acid is produced in our body, and this lactic acid, where we have to remove it from our body as it is very highly toxic. So we have to remove this lactic acid from our body. Now children, have you ever wondered that why this muscles cramp and occurs during heavy exercises or during running. This is because the muscle cells, they respire anaerobically, and there is a partial breakdown of glucose occurs to produce the lactic acid in our body, and because of the accumulation of this lactic acid, our muscles causes the cramps. Our muscles causes cramp, leg muscles. Now normally we get relief from such cramps after a hot bath or a gentle massage with lukewarm oil. Now if we have to get rid of this muscles cramp, what we have to do, children? We have to take a hot water bath, or we have to do the massage with the hot oil, so that the blood circulation there increases, and because of this the supply of oxygen to the muscles also increases, because when you walk, when you run, when you do cycling, there is a the oxygen level at that time is decreases. So we have to increase that oxygen level, and by doing this we can increase the circulation of blood, and when the blood circulation increases, the oxygen level is also increases in our muscles. Now this increase in the supply of oxygen result in further breakdown of lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water. Now this increase of supply of oxygen is further results in breakdown of lactic acid and water. So now we see the difference between these two, the aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and you have to learn this difference between points, children, and you have to write it in your copies as well. Now the first point for the aerobic respiration, it is the process of breakdown of glucose in the presence of written as here, but you cut it and write down with the use of oxygen. So this aerobic respiration, it always occurs with the use of oxygen. Then for anaerobic respiration, children, this process of breakdown of glucose, it occurs without the use of oxygen. Then glucose in aerobic respiration, it is completely oxidized, but in anaerobic respiration it is incompletely oxidized. Then the end products formed during the aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide, water and energy, and there is a lot of energy released during this aerobic respiration. Then for anaerobic respiration, children, the end products are carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol, and this ethyl alcohol we use for making beer and wine. And energy, the energy release is very less during anaerobic respiration. Then in animals, the lactic acid this lactic acid, and much less energy is formed. So the fourth point for the aerobic respiration is energy release is more in aerobic respiration, and the energy release is less in anaerobic respiration, children. Now for aerobic respiration, it takes place in all the higher organisms, and for anaerobic respiration, it takes place in lower organisms like yeast, bacteria and some of the parasitic platforms, and in the muscles of men. So this is about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. I hope you understand it. Thank you.